know what I presented. So I mean, that's what we done the last 2 years. All right, we'll run it. And you roll mine in his, or however you lay mine on the table, whatever.
Okay. So we're gonna. Okay. Good morning. It's early. I haven't had my coffee yet, but I do know that the coffee they are serving before 7 o'clock, so that's good to know for the future. This is the House Committee on Privileged Elections Campaign Finance Subcommittee. I am your chair, Delegate Paul Krizak, and it's quite an honor to be the chair and thank our chair of Privileged Elections, Marcia Price, for choosing me. And we would like to take roll call, please. So we have everybody, well, we have a quorum present, so we will start the meeting and we will go to, we have two identical bills, HB 40, almost identical, HB 629. Apparently, these two delegates working across the aisle have been presenting this bill for a few years together as a tag team, and I don't want to stop them now. I think maybe this third time's the charm. We'll see how it goes. And Delegate Simon and Delegate Cherry, you have the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry. I think it's one of these early mornings. This is actually the first couple words I've actually said out loud today. That's how early it is. So I got to get my voice in shape here. So for those of you that think I never shut up, there actually is a period of time where I don't speak. So this bill, you guys have seen this a few times. I think before we get, as a preliminary matter, I think that Council has a couple of technical amendments. Maybe you want to have them report those and get those into the bill first before we start talking about it, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
So we're going to technical amendments.
Okay, would Council please explain the technical amendments?
These are just technical amendments to the headings, that just get them in the right form, and then to the criminal impact statement at the bottom, just to get it to match the one that's on the website that the Criminal Commission gave us. So,
okay. You have a motion to accept the technical amendments.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, the amendments are before us.
Do you read them in? So on line 4 of the introduced bill, after "and as it," strike "shall," insert "may." On line 14, introduced bill, after "and as it," strike "shall," insert "may." On line 810, if the introduced bill, after "appropriation," strike "is $0" and insert "cannot be determined." And on line 810, introduced, after "facilities," strike the remainder of line 810 and insert, therefore, Chapter 1 of the Acts of Assembly of 2023, Special Session Number 1 requires the Virginia Criminal Sentencing Commission to assign a minimum fiscal impact of $50,000 pursuant to Section 30-19.1 semi 4.
Leave out the code section.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right.
All right. Is there anything else? It's pretty much, that's it. All right. Thank you, Council. Delegate Simon.
Okay, so this is a bill that would prohibit candidates from converting funds in their campaign accounts to their personal use. That's basically what this does. This is the third time, I think, presenting it with Delegate Cherry, but this is, I think, my 11th time presenting some version of this bill. And so I'll tell you a couple of things that it does. First of all, it talks about what you can absolutely spend your campaign funds on. That's the first sort of section of the bill. It defines what a campaign, proper campaign expenditure is, and says that there are certain categories of things that you'll always be allowed to do. Among those things, by the way, is we wanted to explicitly call out was child care expenses, so that if you are a candidate for office and you need to have somebody look after your child while you're going to an evening candidate forum and so forth, we've explicitly made that a permitted expense. So there's a number, there are about 7 or 8 things like that we say, these will always be considered permitted expenses. The second thing it does is it gives a list of things that are always going to be considered prohibited expenses, so we can be really clear about that. So things like paying your mortgage with your campaign funds, paying your tuition that's unrelated to your work as a legislator or as a candidate, it will always be prohibited. And there's a list of things like that. And then the piece that always seems to get everybody hung up, and one of the things we worked on very hard with council and with a lot of folks over the interim in 2021 with a joint 2021 joint committee on campaign finance was the issue of people playing games with this particular statute, using this as an opportunity to play gotcha games and politicizing the process for the purpose of just getting people caught up in a trap. So we've built in a number of safeguards to prevent that. So yeah, it's going to require a 4 out of 5 finding by the State Board of Elections to find somebody's violated the statute. If there's a complaint that somebody's improperly spending the campaign funds, that initial part of the investigation is in private, similar to the way that when lawyers receive bar complaints, they can be found to be unfounded and nobody knows that the complaint was ever made. We keep all that quiet so that we prevent people from doing things like filing a complaint and then saying, my opponent is under investigation for improper use of campaign funds simply by having made the allegation. So we try and eliminate that from happening. And then what happens if you are found to have spent things improperly? And this is one of the things that we hear a lot at these subcommittees. Well, what if I am, doing something and I think it's okay, and then it turns out it violates the statute? So we've got some safeguards for that too, right? So that if you find that you accidentally converted something to funds or technically violated the statute, first thing you can do is pay the money back. Like, oh my God, I realized I paid this out of my campaign funds. I probably should have my dry cleaning bill paid out of my own personal funds. It's $13. Here's $13. I'll give it back to my campaign. And then the complaint is dismissed. It goes away. Nobody ever finds out about it, right? So all these sort of hypotheticals, what if I get tripped up by these unintended consequences? The bill contemplates that and has a relief valve for that. So that we're only really getting to knowing, willful, intentional acts where you're just dipping into your campaign funds and spending it on your personal use. And then you still have the option. Again, you have the option to pay it back, and sometimes that'll be the only penalty. Is, hey, you shouldn't have done that. Give the money back. It can be up to a $1,000 fine per violation, but we've capped that at a total of $10,000 as far as the fines go. So that's basically what the bill does. It says what you can do, says what you can't do, says how somebody can complain about it, how you protect it from frivolous complaints, and then what happens if you violated the statute. The other thing we've done is we've empowered the Department of Elections to issue advisory opinions, because a lot of the things is this is so confusing. I just don't want to set up a trap for the unwary. So we've really modeled this after what the feds do. The Federal Election Commission has a whole series of advisory opinions. So if you're not sure what to do, first thing you can do is you can go online, and the Department of Elections is going to have a database of frequently asked questions and answers. And so probably it's going to be somebody's had a similar question about this expenditure before. You can Google it, right? And it'll come up and say, yes, you can do this. No, you don't do this. If you're not sure about that, we've set up a system where, like with our gift giving and our ethics statute, you can ask the Board of Elections, hey, this is a close call. I don't see anything on your website that seems to address this. Is this a permitted expenditure or not? And they will give you an advisory opinion. And if you follow their advisory opinion, you cannot be attacked for having made that expenditure. So we've done everything we can to build in all the supports. And again, 11 years worth of questions and hypotheticals. I think we've tried to anticipate everything. And so that's the bill. I know that Delegate Cherry would like to add I may have something to add. I don't know if
Delegate Cherry, you have anything to add?
I'll step aside here for a second.
You're the junior member on this.
Oh, absolutely. I've only been here 2 years, much less having presented something for 11 years in a row. We do have Susan Beals, who's the chairman of the Department of Elections, that does have a few comments she'd like to offer in terms of what he was just talking about, which is the implementation of it. So if it's okay, I'd like to invite her up.
Yes, please.
Good morning, Chairman Krzik, members of the committee. The department has no position on this bill. We just want to highlight that we did mention we would need 2 positions in the FES in order to carry out the advisory opinions and the additional work that will be placed on the department as a result of this bill.
So would this need to be referred to appropriations? Probably if we do report it. Yeah, I would think so. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Do we have anybody else who would like to speak in favor? Please come to the podium and then introduce yourself, please.
Good morning. I'm Joan Port, President, League of Women Voters of Virginia. We are in support of this bill. Currently, as you know, Virginia has no legal restrictions on how candidates can use their campaign funds, and we rank 46th in the 51 nonpartisan Coalition Integrity Swamp Index. We would hope that when these are combined, that the child care expenses be expanded to dependent care, which I believe was in Delegate Cherry's version. This bill is a welcome step, and we hope that it would be passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in person? We do have some people online. All right, let's call on the folks online. Are you guys ready? No? While we're waiting, will Delegate O'Quinn?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for, I think this is for the patrons, but it may end up being for council.
Okay.
I have two questions, but I'll ask the first one first, if that's okay.
It's always good to start with the first one first.
Okay. Delegate Simon, I was trying to look through and link back to the appropriate code section, and I wasn't having any luck getting the actual link to work. So if Simon for Delegate has an account, and then you have a leadership pack of Simon for Virginia, for instance, you are the delegate who controls both of those accounts. Does this cover both of those? Does it cover leadership packs as well, or is it just your individual campaign account?
I'm going to phone a friend and ask council just to make sure I get this answer right.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, Delegate Quinn, on line 636 is the beginning of the campaign fund section, which regulates campaign funds, and it specifically says a contribution accepted by a candidate or his campaign committee may be used for the following purposes, and it goes on like that. So this is specific to campaigns and campaign committees, doesn't apply to other PACs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Delegate, you have a
got
second.
a follow-up?
Yeah.
And then on line 640, under the use of campaign funds, number 2, and this may be a question for council, it says ordinary and necessary expenses. Is ordinary and necessary, is that just a term of art? Is that something that's defined in the code?
Mr. Chair, Delegate, I believe we got a large portion of this from the federal government regulations on this type of stuff. So that would probably be defined in the FEC opinions that are going to be ported over into Virginia code if this passes via I think it's the third enactment. So that would all be clarified by that. But yeah, it's mostly term of art used in the federal code of regulations.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you.
If I could add to that answer just briefly, again, as Brooks alludes to here, the idea is that we're going to have written guidance on what constitutes ordinary and necessary. So the code won't be the end-all, be-all of this. This is to put it here, but then we'll have, again, the Attorney General is going to provide us some written guidance on what that means and what's permitted. The Board of Elections is going to publish that information. It'll be available for you to look up. So again, I would say it's deliberately vague. We just didn't want to start to get into a whole laundry list of what's ordinary and what's not here in the code. We wanted to let the appropriate agencies do that. And again, that's based on the federal model. We've got, again, decades worth of examples from the federal model that will be our starting point here in Virginia.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Converse-Fowler, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the patron?
You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you again for sticking with this bill. Appreciate the efforts that have been continuously made on it. And from speaking from someone who has childcare, always been hesitant to spend any money on childcare, although we've had an Attorney General opinion, I appreciate that. And I just want to confirm that this is what the Attorney General had confirmed before we're putting into code, correct? What from the letter and the opinion we had before?
Mr. Chair, Delegate Converse-Fowler, the language here tracks the federal legislation, so it would certainly allow that. I think the Attorney General's letter essentially said, since you could spend your campaign money on anything you wanted to prior to this bill, there was no prohibition on child care expense before, and we're preserving that language. So this will not in any way upset that Attorney General's opinion that said you could spend money on child care.
Thank you. Any other questions from the members? So are we ready yet with the public? I think we have Nancy Morgan
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Nancy Morgan from Big Money Out. We support this bill that probably should be called the George Santos bill, I guess. Many of the infractions Santos was charged with are legal in Virginia, but certainly not under federal law or in other states. And as Marcus Simon said, this year been introduced since 2012. And obviously Virginians are amazed that this bill can't get out of chambers. And just to remind you, and this is pretty shocking, Virginia is unique in this country that I can give Delegate Kruzik millions of dollars for campaign and he can spend it on himself, such as vacations, paying off mortgage. And previous sessions, legislators have said that citizens should just trust their legislators. Well, I think that there are just guardrails. This is a simple guardrail to build trust and confidence. It addresses frivolous complaints through establishment of a robust review process, and it moves Virginia forward in good governance. And we did a polling with the Wasson Center, 73% of voters, irrespective of party, support this bill. So please, I hope you pass this bill so we as citizens don't have to come back year after year requesting its passage. We don't want to wait another 14 years. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Nancy. Then we have Ms. Jessica Mott, please.
Hi, my name is Jessica Mott from Arlington.
We're having technical difficulties.
It's cold outside.
It's nice in here, though. This is nice. Should we go? Are we ready? Okay, we're going to go to Karen Greenway.
Yes, good morning. My name is Karen Greenaway. I'm from Port Royal, Virginia, representing the rural districts out here early this morning in the cold. I want to thank the patrons again for bringing this bill forward. This is the third year I've been before different iterations of this same committee in speaking for this bill. The fact of the matter is that Virginia is one of two states that does not prohibit the use of campaign funds for personal expenditures. There's plenty of guidance that is available at the federal level and the state level. There should be no questions as to whether or not, there are, as to what actually a campaign expenditure is. We are just hoping that this year, as my counterpart Nancy Morgan said, that we don't have to come back next year and the year after that just to get this one simple bill passed. Especially when there's plenty of guidance for this bill as to how it should be made into law and it could be implemented. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Do we want to try Jessica Mott again?
Okay, I'll try. I'm from Woeful. We have action. I support this bill. As a campaign contributor, it's important for me to have the confidence that my donations are being used for their intended purpose, the campaign expenses. This trust requires my knowing the candidates are restricted from using these funds for their personal use. The bill establishes well-defined and consistent standards for what does and does not entail personal use, so that all the candidates are subject to the same yardstick. It includes measures to ensure that candidates understand the requirements and provisions to prevent and penalize frivolous complaints. And as we've mentioned, Virginia ranks poorly on campaign finance laws compared to other states, especially regarding restrictions in personal use. According to the 2021 opinion poll, 73% of Virginians support restricting personal use of campaign funds. Passage of this bill is long overdue and should be low-hanging fruit. I urge you all to support this bill.
Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes the testimony, unless there's anybody else in the audience. All right, do we have any further questions? Do we have the committee operates by motion? Sure. Do you have final words?
Real quick, no, I think in response to one of the testimony, if I could propose a very minor line amendment and change the word child care to dependent care in HB 40 so that it would track with what's in, given what I think is going to happen, I'd like to make sure that language is in the HB 40 version of the bill.
Okay, that's fine. Do we have a...
was better, is what he was saying.
That's what it sounds like. Do we have a motion? Okay, do we have a second? All right, we've got it moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. So we have that adds to the other amendments.
Motion to report and refer to appropriations with amendments.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All right, all those in favor, we're going to open up the voting machine. I don't know what we call it, really, computer. The roll. Okay, the motion passes, or the bill passes 8-0. Now, let's take up Delegate Cherry's for housekeeping here. Do we have a motion
So moved.
to pass by indefinitely? Is that what?
Pass by indefinitely, HB
629.
629.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please signify on the voting machine. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, committee. And I just want to make it clear that Delegate Simon has asked Delegate Chair to be his chief co-patron. So this is a bipartisan effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, we have Delegate Watts, HB 126. And I understand there's a line amendment for this as well.
Yes, there is.
Would you mind the council is going to explain the line amendment, please? Read the line.
Yeah, one moment. Mr. Chair, yeah, the line amendment, it's actually going to be 2 line amendments now I'm looking at it. And it's just going to change the date August 1st to July 20th on lines 15 and 26.
Okay, and Delegate Watts, do you mind just explaining what? Let's take have a motion to accept the line amendments. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Right. We have motions moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Okay, opposed? Okay, so the line amendment is before us. Can you explain what the date changes, and maybe you want to do it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The change in date was at the request of the Registrars Association, who pointed out that August 1 could conceivably make it difficult for the party to replace somebody on the ballot, and they asked for the line amendment.
Okay, thank you. All right, you have the, you can please present your bill.
Speaking to the bill, Mr. Chairman? Speaking to the bill. I am so glad that I'm before the Campaign Finance Subcommittee on this bill. This has really nothing to do with whether or not you're on the ballot. It's all about whether or not we are really serious about our campaign finance reports. And I do take them very seriously. They are an obligation that I feel that we have to the voters for that transparency on what the campaign is all about. And yeah, it can be really big bucks, but it also can be a very small or non-finance campaign, but it just gives the voters that much more information about the candidate before them. And that's simply what I'm asking in this bill. That I have found over the years, and as I try to get myself up to speed on the code that you're also familiar with, that we have fines if you don't file on time, if you don't complete it, if you haven't followed the guidance. But those fines are well over after the fact. And again, the voters are not informed by those fines. And so that, again, this is what is before you, asking that at least once before July 20th. So if you have been nominated by the party just before the deadline for the primary, there would be one filing. If you have had a primary, there would be 1 out of 3 filings that this bill would require that at least once you file so that you have some idea as a voter what type of campaign is being run.
Okay. Do we have any questions, Delegate Converse Fowler?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the patron. I was wondering if this applied to only statewide candidates and General Assembly candidates, or if it applies to all, even local or constitutional officers.
There, I would ask counsel, please.
Mr. Chair, Delegate Converse Fowler, this bill would apply to all Virginia candidates, so it wouldn't apply to federal candidates because they don't file campaign finance reports in Virginia. But other than that, anyone who files a campaign finance report in Virginia this would apply to.
Do we have any other questions? Delegate Phillips.
Yes. How will this apply, like in the cases of special elections and things where there's a compressed time period? I myself had like 27 hours before I became a candidate, and then I had 2 weeks before I was elected. So is there anything in this bill that would speak to that?
Mr. Chairman, again, and I would turn to counsel if I don't answer completely. Just as even in your circumstance, you were required, I believe, to have done and again, it's also early in the morning for me, the statement of personal finance, certainly in other other campaigns, you might have to do a petition. You have to file your statement of qualifications that you are someone who would be qualified to vote for the this is the same type of requirement, and I regard it, given that all you have to do is the most simple filing, if in your circumstances you really haven't had, but maybe self-financed a couple $100 and maybe someone in the party has given you a little, it would be very easy to file it. Even if it needs to be corrected after the fact, you have filed, and also everybody, all the system knows that you have filed as a candidate. So yes, it's another piece of paperwork, but I don't regard it as being an onerous piece of paperwork, given the seriousness of the qualifications to be on the ballot. I think filing a campaign finance report is equal to those requirements.
A quick question, follow-up, and then Delegate Henson has. So would, if you have not filed your campaign finance report, you've missed one, and you're up against the deadline, like in his case, and it's even a couple hours before the deadline, could you file it late and there's a late charge and you're all fine?
Mr. Chairman, my intent in the wording of it was to say, yes, you could file it late, but you must file it.
So it doesn't. Yeah. So you can pay the fine, you can file it late, and everything's hunky-dory.
But it has to be in this case by July 20th, so that before your name's on the ballot, you have filed, right, so even late, incomplete.
Okay, Delegate Henson.
No question. You actually answered.
Okay. Yep. Anybody, Delegate Phillips, you want to follow up?
Yeah, you just mentioned July 20th again. If that's the only date included, that's an issue if you have a special, because you couldn't do it before July 20th if you don't know until November or December.
Question for council. Would in this case, if you're in a special election like he was, this bill wouldn't apply if this was law, would it? Because he couldn't be filed by July.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the bill requires, it says a campaign finance report that is required. So if you became a candidate after this deadline, your special was way out, wouldn't apply to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Motion to report.
We have a motion to report. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. As amended with the 2 little line amendments. Thank you. We will please vote on your electronic voting machine. Okay, the bill reports as amended, 8-0. Thank you very much, Delegate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members
I
of the
think
committee.
that concludes, Delegate Sickles,
We would need to vote to pass by.
we're going to have to vote to pass this by. Give him.
Motion to pass it, do I have a motion?
We have a motion to pass the bill by,
Second.
and we have a second. Is that a voice vote? Yeah, all those in favor of passing this bill by, to give him more time, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it, the bill is passed by for the day. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next week, hopefully not at 6:30, but we may have to go earlier. Is there anything else for the good of the body? It's good to see everybody, all the new members. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right, see you next week. Thanks.